Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around we watched Carnival of Monsters. What was that one about?
I've actually forgotten everything about. I thought the last thing we watched was the Three Doctors, but Carnival of Monsters. Remind me. I blanked on it.
Carnival of Monsters was where the Doctor and Joe landed on what seemed to be just a normal Earth ship. Turns out it was a normal Earth ship, but it was a part of this miniaturized collection of monsters that these carny folk were trying to pass off to these gray alien dudes who were very serious.
All right, yeah, now I remember.
Yeah, and eventually the Doctor managed to make his way out of the machine, and he said this was completely illegal, and came in like Ghostbusters, shut this whole place down. And then there were giant monsters. And, it was a whole thing that eventually led to the Carny folk being heroes too, because there was some sort of political revolution that the Grey Dudes wanted to do. So, but they ended up being heroes. So
yeah, and I think other than the title and the overdone costumes of the Carny folk, we actually thought it was pretty funny and pretty good.
Yeah, it was a really interesting episode.
Yeah.
So, this time around, we're moving on to Frontier in Space.
Okay.
A very generic, that could be anything. So, the thing that would pop into my mind if I were writing this, like, okay, Frontier in Space. Frontier, cowboys, cattle, we're putting cows in space.
You mean, wait for it, the herd shot round the world? Dad joke.
Precisely. But yeah, actually, I've had an idea for that, for some sort of a sci-fi show where it's like, well, we need to herd these space cows through, like, to the next star system, and it literally is just them, just cows can fly like Santa's reindeer, but they're just flying through the cosmos, and you have to, like, herd them.
Well, you could have some kind of, cosmic species, like a whale or something that, is, again, supposed to provide food like cattle. And then the cowboys would basically be in either individual spaceships or, large groups. So basically, the whole idea, the original idea that Gene Roddenberry said was wagon train to the stars.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be kind of an interesting idea.
Well, I was also thinking they could totally pull that off on The Mandalorian. If it was just some weird cows like, oh, The Mandalorian, he needs some information or whatever, and it's like, oh, I'll give you the information, but first you have to do this side quest where you help get my cattle across, and he's like, oh, fine, I guess I have to do this now, this is the way, So alternatively, to make it a more grounded version of that story, you could actually just have strange, they're not cows, but just some sort of fauna that's on a planet that you're actually herding. That could be an episode of the Book of Boba Fett, where it's like, oh, well, I must herd these cattle to Mos Pelgo in order to, defeat the Pikes or whatever. Whatever the plot of that season is. I've seen the whole season. You haven't, but I still don't know what the plot of that season was. So anywho, none of that is going to be happening in this episode, I'm sure. If it did, that would be hilarious.
I'm seeing the word Ogrons. Or Ogrons.
Yeah.
Aren't those the people we met? What was that Dalek story that didn't have the Daleks in it, practically?
Yeah, Day of the Daleks.
Day of the Daleks.
Yeah, they're like the slaves of the Daleks. Yeah. So, who knows? Maybe we'll get Daleks.
Wasn't there an Ogron featured in Carnival of Monsters?
Yeah, just briefly, it was mentioned that they had Ogrons in there. So
as well as weren't there also like shots of Daleks and Cybermen?
At least one Cyberman. I don't think they had any Daleks. No. So, but yeah, so they've at least been mentioned. I don't know why they feel the need to bring the Ogrons back. They weren't particularly memorable, but all right. Well,
maybe they're going to do something new with them.
Maybe. Well, we might as well see if they do anything new with them.
All right, is this a 4-parter or 6-parter?
I'm pretty sure this is 6. Yes.
Yeah.
This is 6 parts, so we will be watching 3 today, 3 next week. So, you got anything else?
Well, other than to say, you might notice that I'm not wearing my sweater or my hoodie or don't have the blanket. That's because here in Oklahoma, this is what the middle of February. This
Yeah.
is 12th of February, and it's 65 degrees outside. That's highly unusual for this time of year. And it's supposed to stay in the 60s through Wednesday, and then Thursday it's going to snow again.
It's always on Thursday, which is the day that I... This sounds ridiculous. It's when I go out to the milk store and I buy milk.
The milk run. He goes out and... I usually shop on Sundays and gets most of the stuff for the week, and then Alex goes out on Thursdays to get anything that might have run out and then we need for the weekend before I go shopping again. So
yeah, mainly milk and Pepsi, because that is all I subsist on. So, just...
That and Cheetos and Cool Ranch Doritos.
Yes, exactly. And you can never have too much Pepsi. And with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into... This is a Pepsi room, thank you. With that said, let's jump right into Frontier in Space. I wish I was wearing my Pepsi shirt today, but I'm not.
This is Earth cargo ship C982, on course and on schedule. We shall be entering hyperspace in 50 seconds.
No, it's Alien.
Something about flour.
They're carrying bulk flour.
What?
They're carrying a cargo of bulk flour.
It'd be a neat illusion if the door was slightly open and you could see that it was bigger inside.
Yeah. Oh, it's a trap.
You have to say that like the guy from Star Trek or Star Wars. There's a trap.
We'll be on our way soon. Now let's go and take a look at the ship's calendar.
You think she realizes now that every time he says, we'll be back soon, it's just, alright, we're not.
Jack, what's the matter with you?
He's ignited! He's ignited!
Remember the dark and put it on the gas.
This is Earth cargo ship C982. Situation red alert.
I'm glad they got to reuse the trashings a bit.
Their car ships, you steal their cargoes, you ignore our protests, and just meet them with these counter charges.
Our charges are true, but yours
That's
are
really cool.
false.
Yeah.
The treaty between our two empires established a frontier in space. We have never violated that frontier. You have invaded our part of the galaxy many times.
In pursuit of your ships when they have raided ours.
There's definitely another... We just had a title, now write a script.
General Williams? I
Oh,
take
that
it a
dude's a
rescue
Vulcan,
attempt
for
has
sure.
been mounted.
As you wish, Madam President.
Costume of the
Your
Draconian is
general
very
is insolent.
reminiscent of Ming the
We know
Merciless.
the hatred
Well-
he has always felt for our people. Long ago, he caused war. Path you are treading leads only to war. And in that war, Draconia will destroy you.
It's a shame there's no Brigadier in the future.
Now, Earth and Draconia are both expanding, you see, colonizing one planet after another. And they're sitting on a powder keg.
Yes, but why do they mistake us for these dragons?
No, Draconians. No, dragons is rather an unflattering nickname.
Why should anybody go to all this trouble to make people see things?
Why indeed?
Well, we've got to get out of here somehow.
So basically, it's the Cold War. Yeah. Does that count for a coin? I'll count it for a coin.
I can see. What are you doing?
I'm reversing the polarity of my ultrasonic screwdriver's power source.
Reversing the polarity.
By converting it into an extremely
That
powerful
ought to be a drinking game.
Well,
What will that do?
we got the shot glasses for it. The sonic screwdriver's a bit different now.
There you are. That's it. Oh, how very embarrassing. Good afternoon.
Oh!
In Los Angeles, demonstrators burnt an effigy of you.
It's been like an hour.
Yes, we shall soon know what really happened.
If there's anyone alive to tell them.
Oh. You know, I was curious. I was like, are the Ogrons pulling all this off? Because that seems very strange for them, but I guess it could just be him. He's trying to incite war. It's like Star Trek Into Darkness, only better.
War is coming, and who's gonna lead us? You!
Doctor, I'm over here.
Why would bulk flour be dangerous?
Well, it's like sand. It's coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere.
They also took the TARDIS. We're stranded.
How did they fit the
What are we meant
TARDIS
to do?
through that door?
Try and get the TARDIS back, of course.
Last time we met the Ogrons, they were working for the Daleks, right? Well, you don't suppose
No,
about...
no, not necessarily. No, the Ogrons are mercenaries. Other life forms use them to do their dirty work.
You may be right. Maybe the general.
Yeah.
Did they get the cargo?
I don't know.
Yes, they took everything.
It's including some rather valuable property of mine.
Oh, tough luck.
Oh, thank you very much.
Dragons. Stowaways. That's it. They were stowaways. They were sending messages.
That's right. They were helping the dragons. The traitors.
Oh, that's a bit awkward.
Yeah.
Well, this is a very interesting one.
Yes. Now, again, just a minor point. As a director, that was a weaker cliffhanger than was necessary. You know, you just barely saw the guns. It would have been much better to literally see all the guns or maybe hear them clicking or something so that, you know, everybody would know exactly what was happening. But that happened a little too quick, and if, you know, you had turned away to sneeze or something, you look back and go, what happened? You didn't know. There was no way to wind it back or anything.
Well, I honestly thought that the episode would end at the Doctor being shot.
Yeah.
Like, that seems like a classic, like, oh no, there's danger, tune in next week. So, yeah, I thought it would be there, but then it wasn't. And I was like, oh, okay, we're still going. Okay, interesting. But it's an interesting, just an interesting plot just already. It's very Cold War. You could even, I guess this is the 70s. I don't feel like Star Trek was doing too much of this with the Klingons. Like, you had a bit of the Klingons. I don't really remember them in the original series, though. So
well, that's because they didn't look at all like what they look like now.
Well, yeah, I know they look different. They look more like, painted Russians, but still, like, I don't remember too many episodes with them.
Yeah, I think this is more like in the early 60s, there was a film called, I think it was called 7 Days in May, and it's about basically a military, the United States military tries to take over the civilian government because they want to provoke a war. And there were people, both on the Russian side and I presume on the American side, who thought that the only way they were going to settle the Cold War was with a hot war. But it was the civilians like John Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev who realized that if we start a war, this isn't going to be a World War II war. This isn't going to be a conventional war. This is what they call mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
You launch one nuclear missile and the entire world will come to an end.
Right. There's no, boots on the ground in this one. It's just, they go up, they go down, we're done in, like, I'm going to say less than an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And that's generous, I would say.
Yeah, I would imagine 80% of the world's population would be killed in a war like that.
Yeah. Though, isn't it like, if you're, like, really, really far south, you may be okay?
Yes. Australia, South Africa, Argentina, Chile, the South Pacific Islands, those would probably at least survive because the primary part of the war would be in the Northern Hemisphere.
Right. Of course, it does make me wonder. I haven't looked at too many like videos about that, like what would happen, but like I'm trying to think like, okay, well, they would all obviously target all the major cities and stuff in America. It's like, okay, well, what if you lived in like the middle of absolute nowhere? You still got problems, though.
Because, for example, right here in Oklahoma City, they would probably drop at least 2 nuclear weapons on Tinker Air Force Base, since it's the AWACS, the Airborne Warning and Control System. When I went to high school, Omaha, Nebraska, you'd think, seriously, who would drop a bomb on Omaha, Nebraska? But that's where the Strategic Air Command headquarters is, so it would be wiped out. Minot, North Dakota, I don't know if you remember this, but from the film War Games, there's this little town in northern North Dakota which would be hit because it is a base that has the nuclear missiles for the United States.
I mean, you'd honestly think like, oh, well, they're not going to hit the, sort of more rural or I guess small towns that are like in the mountains or anything like that. And it's like, well, yeah, they would, because that's probably where the missiles are anyway. Yeah. That's the perfect place to put your stuff, but that makes it then a new target. Yeah. Like, the only thing I could think is like Wyoming. Like, there's probably nothing there. In general, like I don't know if people live there, so maybe you might be okay.
Well, the North American Air Defense Command, NORAD, is in Colorado, if I recall correctly. So
it's close enough.
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, for any of you in Australia or the most southern of southern countries, congratulations, you may just survive. Though you folks in Australia, I guess you have other things to worry about then at that point. So. I say that like the Australians haven't been surviving their own region for hundreds of years or whatever. Yeah. So, but anyway, but onto this. Just a very interesting... This kind of reminds me a bit of the Daleks' master plan, where that was, more World War II and, we're all equal here, but, some of us are more equal than others and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of that, but now we've just sort of moved on to the Cold War.
Yeah.
And it's already interesting that, like, I feel like we've already figured out the twist that it's like, okay, well, clearly that guy, the guy who's clearly this archetypal character that we've had since Marco Polo of he's the one that he's not the cool one, So it's like, okay, well, he's probably hired the Ogrons because they're mercenaries to pull this off, to start this war between Earth and Draconia. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I feel like I figured out the twist already. So what all are we doing for the next 5 episodes, I wonder,
Because that may not be the twist. I mean, this is, again, the perfect setup where they'll lead you down one way and then suddenly it's not what you think at all.
Yeah. It's like Knives Out. Whereas, like, where they basically, like, in the first 20 minutes, they already give away the twist, and it's like, that's the fake twist. There's still more twists and turns we have to go through. So, it was a great movie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And I understand they're doing another one.
Yes, I think Ryan Johnson, like, posted a first look, but it's basically just an entirely new cast, with the exception of Daniel Craig, so yeah, looking forward to that one, definitely.
Yeah.
Anywho, we should move on. Oh, you know what I just thought? With the whole thing of the general guy being too obvious, what if the twist is that it's the Master? Because of course it would be.
Take his gun, go to the flight deck, and make somebody take us back to Earth.
Joe, this ship's already going back to Earth.
Oh. Oh dear.
In there.
This one's a little bit roomier.
Did I ever tell you the story about how I was once captured by the Medusoids?
What are they?
Medusoids? How can I describe them to you? Well, they're a sort of hairy jellyfish with claws, teeth, and a leg.
Ugh.
Just one leg.
One of these. So I said I was on my way to meet a giant rabbit, a pink elephant, and a purple horse with yellow spots.
What happened?
Well, the poor old machine just couldn't believe it. Had a nervous breakdown.
And then what happened?
Well, they put me under another one of these mind probe things, and the same thing happened.
But you weren't telling the truth. I mean, you weren't really going to meet a giant rabbit, a pink elephant, and a... What was it?
Purple horse with yellow spots. Yes, I was. You see, they were all delegates for the Third Intergalactic Peace Conference.
Why did you get away from these things?
Well, they had to turn me loose eventually.
Why?
They ran out of mind probes. I can assure you that I've never been employed by anybody. Least of all by the Draconians.
He's technically employed by UNIT.
Should have been.
If we really were working for the Draconians, why did they leave us in your ship?
To act as spies when you were brought back to Earth.
Allow me to congratulate you, sir. You have the most totally closed mind that I've ever encountered. Madam, I beg of you to listen to me.
It is nonsensical.
Just you leave them to me. I'll get the truth out of them. Eventually.
It is a lot of nonsense, but so is the show.
By pocket spaceship, did he mean the TARDIS?
I think so. So I guess they admitted how they got there.
No. Because, again, we never heard that.
Well, yeah.
Makes you wonder what this facility is.
Yeah.
Early 70s brutalism. The place where I worked in the 1980s, the Oklahoma Theater Center, was built in the early 70s. Concrete walls, lots of block shapes.
I must not detain you longer. No doubt you have duties demanding your attention.
Very little delineation between their two costumes to show that he's in charge. He's got a little bit more stuff on his collar there, but we need again some delineation because they look exactly alike.
Well,
It is your responsibility to ensure a complete security blackout on this incident.
Very well, madam.
Her accent
Under protest.
suggests that she's not English, but somebody who is foreign who has learned English.
If you do not speak now, we shall force you to confess.
Don't you realize you're completely on the wrong tack? There is a plot, yes. But the Earthmen are not behind it any more than you are.
Take him away!
well, good job. This is honestly incredibly infuriating to watch, but for every good reason. And this high-pitched sound, it is kind of like hypnotism to an extent.
Now the Ogrons are going to break them out.
Probably. I think that's the first time we've ever heard an Ogron talk.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I mean, it's like infuriating, but for every good reason, because that nobody believes them.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I will say, again, and I hate to keep talking about, as a director and as a writer, that was really choppy, though.
Well, yeah.
And I realize they're trying to compact the time, but, the different the scenes with the president, the Earth president, and with the Draconian ambassador, it was all very, very choppy and it seemed kind of forced and rushed. But again, I think what we're looking at here as what might have been a somewhat longer script. When they realized that they had filmed all 6 episodes, the editor went in and said, I'm sorry, I got to do snip, snip, snip. And then that kind of jumbled it up a little bit faster than I think they wanted to.
Maybe. It's entirely possible. I want more of the president. She seems really cool.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see who that is.
All right.
I mean, she's got a very familiar face, but I don't think I've ever seen her before. Vera Fusey. No, that doesn't sound familiar. But yeah, I was thinking, it all goes back to Pygmalion, My Fair Lady, where they're trying to pass off Eliza Doolittle, who's just basically what they call a gutter snipe, as a duchess at an embassy ball. And there's a guy named Zoltan Karpathy, who's a Hungarian, who listens to her and says, I can tell from her accent that she does not speak English the way English people speak it, so he thinks that she is probably Hungarian and is going to expose her to everyone. And that's the thing there. Although she speaks English, it's got just that hint of an accent, and I, again, don't know where she's from. I would say that's probably Germany or Eastern Europe somewhere, but she speaks English very well, but every now and then you just catch that slight little intonation of some kind, little literally one syllable that you can say she is, even if she was born in England, her parents were probably foreign, and that's why she has that little bit of an accent.
Yeah. Well, even that, I almost feel like makes it all the more interesting, too. Because it's not sort of, I mean, with some leaders, it's not just stock British man or anything. Like, Mavic Chen was kind of a bit different, like, you really couldn't place where he was from, honestly. But, like, that is sort of interesting. I mean, first off, it's a woman as the president of Earth, which is very different. And then, just that slightest hint of another accent in there is very interesting. And obviously, and then you have General Williams, who is stock British man. So,
but like you said, yeah, he's very much the in the mold of the Spock character. Dark hair, clipped across the front like that, the sideburns, and almost with his normal ears, looks like he's got pointed ears. But yeah, he's very much the stock villain. And again, we still don't know if he's behind this, but that's what they're trying to lead us to believe.
Yeah, I think I know that I'm saying it with like 50% comedy, that it's like, oh, what if it's the Master? But they're kind of setting it up to where that it could be the Master, especially because I feel like we've leaned in a little too far on it being General Williams right off the bat, that it's like it can't just be. He could still be a part of this plot still, but I'm thinking he may be working for the Master. So, and who else would come up with a plan like this? I mean, actually, if it is the Master, this would be one of his better plans. This isn't like, I'm going to unleash this bird deity to eat time or whatever. It's like, no, there's a Cold War going on in the 26th century, and I'm going to have the Earthlings and the Draconians kill each other, and then I come in and rule, because that's what I do. So
I'm still holding out a 10% probability that the Daleks are behind it.
Yeah.
Because they were before.
Yeah, that's true. The only thing I could think is, because they did say that the Ogrons are mercenaries specifically, so I guess maybe they're trying to get them away from the Daleks. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Or it could just be, I mean, I don't know who else it could be. It can't be the Cybermen, because they don't show up anymore. So I'm not really sure who else it could be of like this big reveal for this villain.
It could just be the Ogrons. They could just say, hey, we have been mercenaries, is kind of like in the Boba Fett thing.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, if we set these two big empires against each other and they cancel each other out, we could literally then take over. Even though, again, everybody keeps saying they're not smart enough to do that. But at some point, these guys are going, we're tired of being the hired muscle. Let's just let all these other people kill each other, and then we'll just take over.
Yeah, it could be. So.
And again, you're right about the title. Frontier in Space has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, they mentioned it once, like, our two empires have created a frontier in space. Good job. I really do wonder if they came up with the titles first and then gave them to the writers.
There's an inquiry report in on the anti-draconian riots in Peking last week. The petitioners seek your support for compensation.
Pass that on to
Peking and not Beijing. 600 years in the future, and they're still calling it Peking.
Anything else?
I know what's happened has changed all that, but do you really think I'd betray you?
I'm very distracted by the thermos they have there.
I shall not strike the first blow.
The proof you need is in the minds of those two traitors. We shall have to use the mind probe.
Just use it already.
But as far as he's concerned, what he's telling us is the truth.
Then we must break through his conditioning. Unless you tell me the truth, the real truth,
and nothing
I
but
shall
the
be forced
truth.
to use increased power.
There's just no telling some people, is there, my dear?
Step up the power. Increase to 12.
Not 12.
The truth, man. I want the truth.
I'm telling you.
I will get the truth.
See you later.
Is that a new coat of his? I don't remember him wearing green before.
I think it's pretty recent. They at least used it last episode.
I'm giving you a final chance to tell me the truth.
Madam President, I've been telling you the truth for some considerable time.
This could just keep going for the rest of the episode.
You'll be leaving immediately for the penal colony. We're putting you where your draconian friends will be unable to reach you.
So this is the fourth time he's been to the moon?
That certainly looks like flexible plastic and not glass.
Over there. Face the front.
I'm so glad he got to keep his entire suit.
What did they get to you for?
First time?
Oh, it's a long...
Well, I mean, criticize the government and you're for it, aren't you?
Is that why George Carlin's here?
Peace party.
No.
Nevertheless, the Dominion government of Series 4 does have a claim to them.
And so do we. They have vital information.
It must be very important to them.
Wait, they actually have
I
crimes?
think I better see their representative.
The Commissioner, madam.
There he is. As soon as they said that. Oh, that's just brilliant.
Your request is granted.
Madam President, I am most grateful.
Heaven help you if you let them escape.
You may rest assured, General Williams, they will be perfectly safe with me.
He just makes everything better, doesn't he?
Absolutely nothing to make it enjoyable.
You get used to it after a month or two. Anyway, it's all we ever get.
Keep moving.
Sippy cups.
No.
There are warmongers on both sides. We are aware of that.
There's also a third party, Professor, who is plotting to set the two empires at each other's throats. I'll see you alone.
Do you think the doctor has figured it out?
There you have it. That's how I came to be here.
It's fantastic. I mean, are people seeing Draconians, Draconians seeing Earthmen? I can't believe it.
Well, I can.
Well, that's nice to hear.
You don't know what it means to me to have found allies at last.
Well, we better be going, Doctor. This spaceship will be landing any moment.
Interesting that the prison suits are very much like karate outfits.
Well,
Now they're going to open the airlock before they get into their suits. That's got to be the cliff.
Come on, Doctor. We haven't got long.
Listen. Let me pressurize him.
Just want to stand down and pump him up here.
alrighty. And that is part 3.
You called it.
I did call that the Master was going to be a part of this one. And, you know, as soon as it's like, oh, yes, well, here are their crimes. I was like, wait, they actually have crimes? I was kind of looking, I was like, wait, maybe this is just stuff from other episodes? Like, that'd be hilarious if it was just, oh, well, something that happened in Day of the Daleks, it's coming back to bite them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, yes, here's the ambassador from Series 4 or whatever. And it's like, oh, it's him. This is it. And as soon as he walked in, yep, that's the Master. And this is his plot. Alrighty. Well, I will say it's good that they introduced him when they did, because for a second I was like, okay, so we've had like 20 minutes of nobody believing them. Joe's back in a cell, and now the doctor is going off to this lunar penal colony. I was like, okay, I don't want to say like we're derailing or we're getting away from the main thing, but, well, we kind of are. Is a bit. I was like, okay, well, we're just kind of moving away from the Draconians and stuff like that. But bringing in the Master is like, okay, we just needed to take a moment to introduce the Master, and now we'll be back on track.
Now, I'm hoping that the resolution in the next 3 episodes will be worth that, because, again, it was setting up a very interesting situation. You know, because right at the end of World War II, there were American and Russian generals who thought that the war should continue. George Patton, for example, the American commander of the Third Army who got into Berlin, he said they should go straight on to Moscow. You know, he was trying to tell President Truman that, I think Truman was president by that time, may not have been, but he was basically trying to say, now that we finished off the Nazis, let's go ahead and finish off the communists while we still can. But that, to me, sounds like an interesting story to try to tell over the next 3 episodes. So I'm hoping that this is not just another, you know, here's the Master with a really harebrained plot that's going to go nowhere. We know it's going to go nowhere because none of his other plots have ever gone anywhere.
Right.
So I'm hoping that they will at least keep up the momentum that they've started and not, you know, let it go off the rails.
Yeah, but I mean, even for a Master scheme, this one makes the most sense, I feel like. Because even when I'm trying to think about, like, colony in space and stuff like that, it's like, okay, there's some stuff here, or, like, you know, I guess in that one he was trying to find the Doomsday Machine or whatever, or, you know, his, like, oh, well, I will unleash Kronos, who will destroy the universe, and then I will rule it and stuff like that. or I will at least control this crazy being and stuff. This kind of makes the most sense of just pitting both sides again. This is, I guess, it's a lot more subtle for the Master to do.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm at least it makes it all the more interesting. Like, okay, I'm very curious to see how this resolves. What does happen, because it's not even like, well, I'm going to summon this giant bird monster and stuff like that. Which we're getting to a point where we're going to start throwing in coins for that. Not that anyone really cares about that one. Like, we seem to share the opinion on the giant bird monster anyway. But the whole thing...
It was kind of nice, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but seeing that there were some people who said that they really enjoyed, what was it, the Time Monster?
Yeah.
Said, it doesn't usually get a lot of praise, and again, other than the bird monster, we thought it was a pretty good story.
Yeah.
Especially the last 2 episodes.
Right. But for this one, I feel like it works better because it's not just some crazy harebrained scheme that the Master has. He is pitting these two sides against each other, where there are people who already wanted to start these conflicts, like General Williams, who apparently has already started a war with the Draconians, which I thought was interesting, because I also wonder like how long ago that was, because he doesn't seem like a particularly older man. He seems late 30s, maybe 40s, I would say. So it's like, okay, so when did he start this war? How long has it been? It's apparently been long enough to where there is some semblance of peace. There was a bit of culture swapping and stuff like that, but now it's all gotten incredibly tense again. So I'm also just curious, okay, this guy clearly started a war. The Draconians said, like, he's the reason that we went to war in the first place. Everyone kind of recognizes that. Why does he have the position of power that he does? Like, look, I get it, he was this general, he was probably this great war hero or whatever, but after that, you would think the government would be like, okay, well, you did all this, you either won the Draconian War, or at the very least you fought valiantly. Go away, because we can't do this again.
But there is a parallel. Douglas MacArthur on the American side, and there may have been British and French counterparts as well. But Douglas MacArthur, who ended up retaking the Philippines after a disastrous campaign in the South Pacific, during the Korean War, came back and essentially wanted to push the North Koreans out of South Korea, which they had invaded, and that's what precipitated the war. But MacArthur was one of those guys, if I recall correctly, that said, let's not stop at the Yalu River, let's go on in and devastate the Chinese. There were so many people at the end of the war that said we should not allow communism, either in Russia or in China, to take hold. If we eliminate it now, if we just continue the war that we're already in, it may take us a year or two, but we could wipe that out, because they were worried that if we don't wipe it out, then the communists will become our major enemy. But again, the civilians were saying, yes, but if we try to continue this war, millions more people are going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what ultimately led Truman to the conclusion to drop the atomic bombs.
Yeah.
He said, we're going to lose 100,000 people in Japan instead of millions of people that will die if the Allies invade the Japanese mainland.
Right. Well, wasn't that also the thing, was once they defeated the Nazis, I could be completely wrong about this, but I think in Britain, it's like, okay, we defeated the Nazis. And Churchill was like, all right, now turn around, we're all going to Japan, because that's where the rest of the war is. And everyone was just kind of like, what? Why? It's like, yes, that is a problem, but it's almost like, well, the Americans are more invested in that, because we had both sides of that to deal with. But the British were like, well, I don't know if we can just be like, well, we finally defeated the Nazis, you get 5 seconds to breathe and we're going to Japan. And then it's like, well, how can we keep going with that sort of momentum, especially after already defeating a major power like that?
The British took heavy casualties in Asia during the war. And I mean, again, I'm not familiar with what happened in between the fall of Germany, which was in May of 45, and then it was like 3 months later that Japan surrendered after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So yeah, I'm not familiar specifically about what Churchill and the British were doing there, but I know that there were a lot of British prisoners of war who died under Japanese care, such as it was. So yeah, I can understand the reluctance of the British people to say, look, we've been in this war literally from the beginning. I mean, Hitler knew that in order to take Europe and hold on to it, he had to defeat the British. That's where we get the whole Battle of Britain with the Luftwaffe and the RAF. And, again, the British held them off and, endured the Blitz and the V1s and the V2s and the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, it's perfectly understandable that they said, to let the Americans handle this one.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's exactly like you said. They were in that from the beginning, and they were completely invested in Europe. The Americans, we took a little bit longer to... or just a little bit longer to get into
almost 2 years,
to get into World War II. And the only reason we really did was because of Pearl Harbor, which is not Europe, that was Japan. And isn't it that we declared war on Japan, and then it's like, well, we're already here. Declare war on Germany while we're at it. It's like, you might as well. They're already allies, so...
Yeah, that was it. We declared war on Japan on December 8th, the day after Pearl Harbor, and then 2 days later declared war on Germany and Italy because they were part of the Axis.
Right. So the point that I was making is, why would General Williams still be a part of this government? Especially, I mean, we don't see anyone else in this government. It's just the President of Earth and this, obviously a high-ranking general, but we don't see anyone else. We don't see, like, we vaguely hear about, like, senators or something like that. So I guess it's not completely unbelievable that General Williams would still have this, even though he seems to be the direct blame for the original Draconian War. So,
well, that may be simply a function of the whatever the government is, even though she is at the head of it. The rest of the government said, let's keep him there because he will be a symbol. Yes, he did start the war before, but he will also be a symbol to prevent further wars. Because the Draconians will know, if they ever decide to break the treaty, that we have a guy ready who's ready to go to war against them again. So it's probably a symbolic sort of thing, but yes, it's astounding that he has that much influence.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we're also saying this coming from the country where it's like, well, yes, our top general then became the top leader, became the president, the first president. So I guess that's not too out of the realm of possibility.
Well, that happened right after the war, too. I mean, Eisenhower, who was the commander of the Allied forces there in Europe, both parties, both Republicans and Democrats, courted him to run for president, and he chose to run as a Republican, although today none of the Republicans would recognize him. And served 2 terms because this is a guy who said, I have seen the horrors of war and I'm going to make sure that never happens again.
Right. So, but still, I mean, General Williams is a very interesting character.
Yeah.
Even though he does sort of fall into our, stock, he's the one not cool guy, which, again, going all the way back to Marco Polo which I always say it goes back to Tegana and Marco Polo. You could honestly say it goes back to An Unearthly Child, because with the cavemen, I blocked them out of my memories. But I'm sure one of them was more like, oh, well, these strange people in strange dress, we don't like them, make fire or something. So
yes, there was.
Yes. I just don't remember it because I don't remember that story very well.
It was only a 4-parter, if I recall correctly, and it was, because it was so primitive. Yes, Tegana is the first one that we remember because he was such an integral part in that, and that was 7 or 8 parts.
Yeah, that was 7 parts, and also, I mean, just the fact that An Unearthly Child, we watched that like 4 years ago at this point. So, actually, today's the 13th. Let me go check something real quick, because I'm starting to think. Hold on. No, I need most popular uploads. When did that come out? February 7th of 2018. So I've just been watching Doctor Who for 4 years now.
Yeah.
straight.
I have not been watching it that long. It's only been about 3 years that I've been with you. And that was like August
and
2019 maybe.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was about August that this became a weekly thing. So, before that it was just sort of scattered about. But yeah, it's a lot of Doctor Who that we've watched. I mean, even now, just in the classics, it's been 10 seasons. So,
and if I recall correctly, I saw your playlist the other day for the classic channel. It's like we have 125 videos on it or something like that.
Yeah, it is quite a substantial amount. So, and we've still got like 16 more seasons to go of the classics.
Of classics, yeah.
Then there's 13 modern seasons. So,
pray for my health.
Yeah. Anywho. Let's see. Well, some of this stuff does sort of tie into each other of the, all the blame that's being passed around. Like, obviously, there's blame. There's blame on both sides, I suppose. But obviously that happens because of the illusions and stuff that are going on. But I like, and I also don't like, just how much they don't believe the Doctor and Joe. Like, it's almost comical at this point. They go through this entire mind probe and just still will not believe him.
Yeah.
So,
now the technician there seemed to believe him. But,
yeah.
She's just a minor functionary.
Right. Where General Williams is looking at this more as the Tegana of the episode.
Well, his mind is already made up.
Right.
Like the Doctor said, they're not going to believe us till we tell them what they want to hear.
Right. That does remind me, they do that a little bit early on in Better Call Saul, where Jimmy gets taken by these drug dealers, and he tries to say oh no, I'm just a lawyer. I was running a scam. I was trying to scam someone else, but I ended up scamming your grandmother. And the main drug dealer, he doesn't believe them. And he's like, no, you're clearly working for the government and stuff. So then he lies completely. He's like, yes, I'm from the government. He does all of this. He recites all this garbage, sort of government talk. And the main drug dealer, he actually does buy it. Until the other one kind of looks at it as like, he's clearly lying. You put your, scissors right up to his fingers. He would have said anything to get you out of there. And then they finally believe him. It's like, okay, he's just a sort of idiot lawyer just trying to do something. So it is kind of like that, where it's like, the Doctor can say everything. The problem is the Doctor is just too ridiculous that nobody could ever believe him, you know? I mean, it's taken so long for the Brigadier to really believe him about anything.
Now, again, we must go with the theory of multiple timelines, because wouldn't the Dalek invasion of Earth have already happened by this time? So the people of Earth would have known about both the Daleks and time travel and all this other stuff by this time. So if you just said, hey, I'm a time traveler, so this must be in a separate parallel universe where they've not heard of all of this stuff in the past.
You could say that. The only thing is I could see an explanation being like, well, to them, the Daleks just invaded. They didn't know about the time travel and stuff. And also just the fact that it's very much obvious in modern Doctor Who, where there will be this big invasion or something like that, or it's like, oh, first contact that happens, and then it's like, it's a hoax, whatever. There's actually a couple of episodes with the 12th Doctor where all of Earth gets taken over for 6 months by these alien decrepit mummy monk things, and everyone is subjugated to them. And then the Doctor saves the day, and there's still a bit of evidence, they have some broken statues of the monks, and the Doctor asks someone's what did this statue used to be? And someone was like, oh, we just thought they were filming something or something. And just nobody believes it anymore.
Yeah.
So while yes, there should be, this sort of knowledge about it, there just isn't, because it's the one thing Doctor Who will never lock down. So, but yeah, but everything with the whole story of the TARDIS, it's like, yes, I'm a time traveler with this nice fancy suit and a police box that takes me through time and space. it's so ridiculous that they just can't believe it, basically. So, let's see here. I did also like the story he told about the mind probes of the weird furry jellyfish with claws and a leg story of like, yeah, they eventually had to let me go because they ran out of mind probes. So that was funny.
Yeah.
And again, I really do like the president in this one. It's very interesting, just her going off of General Williams, which I mean is also very, again, Marco Polo, because Marco Polo was like, well, I don't believe you, but I'm not fully like against you. Like, I don't think you're that dangerous or anything. Yeah. The president is really the only reason she's doing some of this stuff, like sending the doctor to the moon, is really just because she has to. Is that there's no evidence that he is a Draconian spy, but there's no evidence that he's not. So, and I also like that we also get that from the Draconians themselves. The ambassador is like, okay, clearly you must be an Earth spy. And he goes through all this, okay, that sounds stupid. So you're either really, really committed to this bit or something else, So I really do like that. The Draconians are very interesting, too.
Costumes in this, the sets, wherever they were filming that outside stuff, again, very minimalist, very brutal. This is, again, very, very early 70s stuff. Again, I'm going to show you some pictures of that place I used to work. And again, other than the fact that they initially did it all in concrete and gray colors like that, and then ultimately went back and painted in some bright orange and bright blue. But it looks a lot like that. I mean, it's just it's very square concrete stuff and no decorations at all on it.
Yeah.
But again, costumes, sets, the makeup on the Draconians, just brilliant. I mean, it allows them to look alien, and yet they have full control of their eyes and their mouths.
They look like they'd be on Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's specifically like Next Gen too. Maybe not the original series where like half the stuff kind of doesn't work and half the stuff does. But yeah, like their designs are very, very interesting. I kind of, honestly, I'm kind of looking at this like, well, I hope they show up again, like in some other episode. Like it's like, oh, we've brought back the Ogrons. We referenced them last episode. Now they're back here, and it's like, great. That's not one of your better designs. Like they're not bad.
Well, the Ogrons would be better if. What have we now seen them in 3 episodes here, and however many they were in Day of the Dalek.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we've ever heard them speak, and all they said is "you come" or whatever that. So if they made that, they don't have to be more intelligent, but we do need to hear them speak. We need to know what they're about. They can't just be big ugly muscles.
Right, because they basically just have the melty faces and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, I don't know why we're so hell bent on bringing these guys back. Of all the characters, like all the alien species you could have brought back, this is a weird one to focus on. But I mean, I guess it works in the story it works because they're these mercenaries that are now being hired by the Master instead of the Daleks. So I get it, but they're not the greatest. They're not what I would bring back, basically. The Draconians, I'd bring them back in a heartbeat. Yeah. So they're really, really good.
And the other thing about the Draconians is that they're highly intelligent.
Yeah.
And they're, they've got all sorts of, they've got a lot of facets. They're not just, we are the big ugly lizard people and we are going to take over the entire universe.
Yeah.
They have, again, almost the same reactions to what's going on as the humans do. So.
Yeah, like you almost suspect them to be just sort of, all right, here's Doctor Who's versions of the Klingons, but they're a bit different. They don't really seem like, they talk about like honor and stuff like that, but they're not quite the warrior race that the Klingons are portrayed as.
Yeah.
It is one of those things, though, that I saw someone was talking about the Klingons, and it's like, should the Klingons have ever actually gotten into space? Because they're a bunch of meatheads. Like, they don't really like science. They don't like their scientists. They sort of keep them in caves and where they can't be seen and stuff like that. It's like, how did the Klingons ever get out into space,
Well, you could say the same thing about Earth. I mean, go back to First Contact, and, we've blown up half the Earth in the Third World War, in the Eugenics War, or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
And, here's this guy who's basically just a tinkerer and a drunkard who likes rock and roll, and he invents warp drive and takes an old nuclear missile and converts it into an actual warp drive spaceship. So
yeah, so I guess that's true. Is that Earth and Kronos are not too far apart. So, let's see. Well, we got the Lunar Penal Colony, which was interesting. Again, this is like the 4th time the Doctors had to go to the moon, which was interesting. And actually, with the Draconians, they kind of look like the Ice Warriors, honestly. Like so with that and the moon, it's like, all right, I'm seeing like some somewhat Ice Warriors with that one episode that they had. Yeah. So, which I guess was just called the Ice Warriors now that I think about it. But yeah, so that was interesting. We have the whole thing with the peace party, which I liked initially, that he bribed the guy with a pardon, which is interesting. I kind of like that, where it's like, you hear something like the peace party, and it sounds very much like, oh, well, yes, we will not go back on our words and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, but the point is to get peace. So we got to break out of here, and we got to, give this, thief or whatever a pardon and stuff. So it's like, well, means to an end, I guess.
Got to break the law to change the law.
Yeah. But Professor Dale was very interesting.
Yeah. And again, roll the credits there. See who he was. Here, I'll go black. No.
But yeah, he was very interesting, and I guess the other one is Penal there.
Yeah.
The two of them were very, very interesting. And this penal colony that's just you go there and you're just stuck there forever, which is very, very interesting. So yeah, just is really good, and I like that he is the first one to believe the Doctor. So, and it's all the more satisfying after 3 episodes of nobody believing them. I gotta sneeze, I think. No, I don't. No. Alright. Well, I tried. I've been sniffling all episode.
Well, again,
it's been driving me crazy.
The warm weather outside, I'm sure, is causing some plants to bud early, so we're getting a lot of pollen in the air. I'm positive.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked out when I took the dog out this morning, that the grass is green, and it usually never greens up until at least March.
Yeah.
But the weather here has been so weird. It was 60 and 70 degrees, 80 degrees even right up until Christmas time. Then it got really, really cold, and then it got warm, and then it had snow, and now we're getting warm again. Then we're going to have more snow. So
yeah.
Welcome to Oklahoma.
Yep. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 seconds. It'll change, but not to what you would expect. So you can never pin down what the weather will change to.
I don't know if I've told this joke here on the channel before, but I tell it in my class all the time. When Mother Nature says you can't have all 4 seasons in the same week, Oklahoma says, hold my beer.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess...
Is that it?
Pretty much. The only other thing is the Master himself, who, again, he's great to have, And I think there's one more story after this with the Master, and honestly, it's just going to be such a shame, because he really... It's one of those things where it's like every episode with the Third Doctor has been really good, but he just makes them all so much better.
Yeah.
And there's just something about it where every episode, even in this episode, where it's like, okay, they've done this so many times that I can predict their writing down to the point where I know the moment where he will walk in. But every time, you never get tired of it.
Yeah.
You never get tired of him. Even though he's the most predictable, what's going to happen, how he's going to be written, where the episode is going to go from here. All of that. But he just sells it so much that it just works. So, it's very interesting. And honestly, after all these episodes, they will bring back the Master in modern Doctor Who. We've had 3... technically 4 at this point, and all of them are really, really great. But after watching all these episodes, I think Roger Delgado is now my favorite Master. So yeah, it's good to have him in this one. As predictable as that has been, it was great to have him. So very curious to see where we are going in the next 3 episodes.
All right.
You got anything else?
I got nothing.
then that is pretty much it. Next week we will finish off Frontier in Space. Again, another poorly named episode. It must just be that they write names and then give them. It's like, all right, go. And I wonder if it was Malcolm Hulk who wrote this one. I wonder if he had this entire idea and then they gave him the name Frontier in Space and he was like, okay, there. I wrote in a line where they say Frontier in Space because otherwise, what a terrible title for this. Yeah. So, I don't know what you could have gone with.
Well, I mean, Frontier in Space is nebulous. Call it the Frontier War.
Yeah.
Or, not to make a joke out of this, but, the Final Frontier, like they always said in Star Trek, and even named one of their worst movie after it.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to include the word Frontier, that's fine. But
I don't know.
Frontier in Space is just, it doesn't say anything.
Yeah, you could have gone with, even just go simple. Just be like the Draconians or something like that. Or even if you just went with Cold War in Space, the most blatant thing you could possibly do, it's like, that at least makes more sense. Yeah. So, but yeah, we will watch the next 3 episodes next time. But that is pretty much it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our classic Doctor Who reactions, as well as another playlist for another Doctor Who series we have on the channel that's been going on for 4 years now. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.